Thanks, Bud. Same here. Thank you very much. I want to thank you all for being here today, and as always, I want to thank the press for getting the accurate information out to the people of Boston and Massachusetts. I want to, as I started yesterday, I want to give a special shout out to our first responders, our medical professionals, and all essential workers who are doing important work every single day as we get through this crisis. That includes our public employees, our public works employees who are making sure trash and recycling gets picked up on time, our parks employees who are maintaining our open spaces, our custodians who continue to clean the building here at City Hall and other municipal buildings in our city. They're keeping our city running in these extraordinary times, and I want to just say thank you very much, not only to them, but to their families. And to everyone who's practicing social distancing and to help us slow the spread of the virus, I want to thank you as well. I want to start with the numbers, our updated numbers. As of yesterday, which this has been broadcasted widely, there were 4,955 cases of COVID-19 in Massachusetts. I have the updated Boston numbers today. There are 825 in Boston. That means we're up 90 from yesterday. We've seen 55 people in Boston make full recoveries, and a number of the people who have passed away during this time in Boston is still 2. And in the state 48 as of yesterday. And as I mentioned again yesterday, our hearts go out to the families of who have lost loved ones. Each loss certainly is a solemn reminder of how dangerous the situation is that we're all living in right now. And that's why we're going to continue to work around the clock to slow the spread, keep people healthy, and prevent the loss of life. This is a very fast and evolving, moving situation, and we're using all available resources to stay on top of it. We declared a public health emergency, which gave us flexibility in our response. We've been providing information to the state as they work to support cities and towns. That includes changes in state laws to allow us to act quickly to protect our residents. The legislature is currently working on a final plan right now, which we will talk about later in some of the opportunities for helping the residents of the Commonwealth, and I want to thank the legislature who acted quickly on this piece of legislation. Following the passage of this legislation, some provisions in this, the City of Boston is going to take a number of steps to relieve pressure on taxpayers. We intend on delaying property tax payments until June. We will suspend interest charges on late motor vehicle excise bills until June 30th. Late penalties on meals tax collections will also be waived by the state. We're working to make sure that essential services continue during the emergency. Working with the Boston Water and Sewer, we have already taken action to ensure that water service continues for all Boston's residents. All of these actions will help protect residents in our city who are experiencing financial hardship. Rent payments. The first of the month is on this coming Wednesday. It's a stressful time for many people with rent and mortgage payments. Many residents have lost income and are going to lose income in the near future, are worried about what happens if they can't make their payment on time. So a number of steps that we've taken on housing we're going to talk about today. We have worked with housing advocates, property owners, and the Boston Housing Authority to halt all eviction proceedings until the crisis is over. The governor also announced a statewide ban on non-essential evictions until April 21st. We've also anticipated that the federal stimulus package will provide Boston with new resources to help renters, as well as moratoriums on evictions and foreclosures at properties with federally backed mortgages. We're analyzing the package right now, as well as the expanded unemployment benefits that are included. We will let people know exactly when they can apply for what as we get this information. In the meantime, we're asking people with any questions to call our Office of Housing Stability if you have any questions or need advice. We're also talking to our banks about mortgage payments. We're working with them to develop a plan that would allow homeowners to suspend or defer payments without penalties. Banks are letting us all know, all the banks are letting us know that they want to work with homeowners to find solutions, but they need to hear directly from you. So I've said this the last few press conferences, it's incumbent upon you, if you're having a problem paying your mortgage because of this crisis, please reach out to your bank and ask them what flexibilities are being offered right now. You can also contact the Boston Home Center, and their contact information is on our website to help you with this as well. We also know that anxiety about housing goes beyond monthly payments. Many families have been struggling to find or hold on to housing before this crisis even began. Homelessness creates barriers for our students to grow, learn, and succeed. Schools being closed presents even more challenges for our families experiencing housing insecurity. That's why we launched a partnership between the Boston Housing Authority and the Boston Public Schools, and we're going to provide rental vouchers to 1,000 families with BPS students over the next year. 500 of those vouchers will go to families living in shelters. The other 500 will go to families who are at risk of displacement. These vouchers will allow families to seek housing in the private market with significant rent subsidies. Our outreach will begin immediately during and after this crisis. So families, we're going to be reaching out to you, and we're going to ask you also to contact the school department. Recapping yesterday's announcements, the announcements builds on our comprehensive plan to help those experiencing homelessness. Yesterday, we announced hundreds of new beds for homeless individuals at repurposed locations all throughout the city. This will help social distancing in shelters and give individuals space to quarantine, and we have more to come. We want to remind people that our daytime drop-in sites are still open around the city. These are not overnight shelters, but they are places where people can spend time during the day, wash their hands, and pick up foods and other items that we were offering. These include this includes the city-operated engagement center on Southampton Street, as well as several operated by partner nonprofits around the city. The list can be found at boston.gov, or you can call 311. For our veterans, I want to say a word about them and their families. Our Veterans Service Office is fully operational and continues to serve veterans on a remote basis. I've talked a lot about how social distancing doesn't have to be social isolation. This is especially important in the lives of our veterans. One thing that we've done is create a program called Pen Pal, program for our veterans who may be feeling lonely. We're working to identify these veterans now and match them with volunteers who will check in with them periodically. We already have a number of volunteers signed up to help, and if you want to sign up, you can email us at veterans@boston.gov. That's veterans@boston.gov, and we'd love to have you. This is a great way to check in on our veterans and make sure they know how we are looking out for them during this tough time, because in our tough times, they looked out for us serving our country. If there's any veterans in need of any assistance, including help with food access, they can contact our Office of Veteran Services by phone or email, and we're going to make sure that we take care of them. Before I open it up for questions, I have a few more reminders for everyone. We're continuing to serve Boston students and families while the Boston Public Schools are closed. We have 70 sites around the city that are distributing free meals and also some other essential items. We distributed more than 22,000 Chromebooks for online learning. And if you want more information or to find out about the Chromebooks, we ask you to go to boston.gov/coronavirus or call the school department or call us here at City Hall at 311. If you're a senior citizen having trouble accessing food, you too can call 311 to speak to our Age Strong Commission. We can connect you to services. Anyone facing food insecurity can also contact Project Bread at projectbread.org or the Greater Boston Food Bank at gbfb.org. These great organizations can help you find meal sites in your communities. I announced yesterday that we're taking measures to discourage anyone from engaging in activities in our parks that will put them or others at risk. This includes sports such as soccer, street hockey, basketball, and group sports. To start, we will temporarily put zip ties on our basketball hoops. With new signage will also go up in parks this week. We're doing this to protect the residents and encourage social distancing in our parks. We're also removing any hockey nets that we have in our hockey courts and tennis nets that are in our tennis courts to make sure that we want to be completely safe here. Remember, we better continue to do social distancing right now, because that will help us take steps that we don't have to take later. Lastly, I want to speak to the people of Boston. These are extremely difficult times. These adjustments are all hard, and these decisions that we're making aren't easy. We want to make sure that life goes back to normal as soon as possible. So we're missing out on some of our favorite springtime traditions, such as opening day at Fenway, the Boston Marathon, and other events that we usually have this time of year. But we should also remember Boston has always been a city of champions and comebacks. We've overcome tough situations before and shown what it means to be Boston strong. Sometimes when we're feeling down, we need some words of encouragement. That's why some of our favorite Boston local athletes are sharing why they're rooting for Boston. Today we started our first video on Twitter and Instagram from Boston Bruin captain Zdeno Chara. And there's more to come, so we're asking you to keep your eye out in the days ahead. We're asking all of our athletes to get involved, from our little leagues to our school teams to our college athletes. Send us a photo or video using the hashtag rooting for Boston. Let's show everyone that we're in this together. I can't stress enough about the need for physical social distancing. I can't stress the need for people continuing washing your hands, wiping down surfaces. We can get ahead of this situation and stay ahead of it if we continue to practice this. There's a stay-at-home advisory that the governor put in place last week. For the most part, people are adhering to that, but we don't have 100% of people following that rule. So I'd like to ask people to please, don't think, if you're not going to think about yourself, think about someone else in your family. Think about your neighbors. Think about the elderly. Think about the people that we can protect here to make sure that we can get through to the other side of this. I know that many reporters would usually like to be at this event, but they can't be here today. So they sent in some questions. So I'm going to just start with their questions, and then we're going to go to open up to the rest of everyone else. Karen Regal wants to know about virtual AA meetings that I talked about on Friday. And the best way I can suggest to people for virtual AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, you can contact Central Service. And when you contact Central Service, the number's in the I was going to say in the yellow pages, but download it on your phone or call 411 and you can get the number for Central Service. Adam Riley has a few questions. The governor says cases in Massachusetts will surge as early as April 7th. What does the city need to be prepared? Boston has been working with the McChrystal Group to plan a possible shutdown. What will happen? What recommendations has the Army Corps of Engineers made regarding the surge healthcare sites in Boston? We are following these estimates closely to shape our future response in Boston and hope to have more clarity in the coming days. What we do is that we are just at the beginning of this, and I want to be very clear. As Adam mentioned, that's why we're working with General McChrystal, so that we can focus on building city government that can move with modern speed and complexity that is necessary to respond to the situation at hand. We brought this group in to help us create a plan for down the road for the inevitable, if there's an inevitable, that we have to close the city down, and how do we get services back to the residents of Boston. If there's only a plan for today, then we'll fall behind and put people at risk. If you listen to Governor Cuomo talk about the way he's planning in New York, he's giving us a roadmap on what we need to be prepared for, and we need to be ahead of the virus, and we need to be ahead of the spread of the virus. So we're going to continue to lay down that foundation. We're going to continue to plan for the worst and hope for the best, and that's what our residents need and deserve. Right now, everything is on the table. I am thankful for the partnership we have with the state and added the assistance of the Army Corps of Engineers. I want to thank them as well. And I just want to say to the reporters, if you're working from home or you want to submit questions before the press conference, this is the first time I've done that, so it seems a little odd. We'll gladly take them and try and address them here or get your questions answered. I don't obviously have a press conference every day, but if you can't make it and you want questions asked, if we have a press conference, just please send us the questions and we'll get them answered. And I'll open up for questions. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I hope we don't have to do that. I know the mayor of New York is imposing a $500 fine if people don't practice social distancing. I'd prefer to hope that people in Boston and Massachusetts understand the importance of this. When you have the governor on TV every day and you have mayors and officials across the Commonwealth spending 100% of their time on the coronavirus, I think the seriousness of this should be understood by everyone by this point. I don't want to get to that point where we're fining people. I don't even want to get to the point where I'm zip tying basketball courts and taking hockey nets out of street hockey courts. But unfortunately, we have to right now. So my intention is not to fine people. My intention is to continue to ask the people of Boston to respect each other and to follow the proper protocols laid out right now. The science shows that if we practice social distancing and we continue to stay in and around our homes and don't engage with other people as far as gatherings and events and parties and dinners like that, we can make a big impact. So I'm hoping for Boston we understand the importance of that.
Mayor Walsh, I'm wondering if you can speak to any disparities, maybe Marty Martinez, among people who have COVID-19, any type of demographic disparities, whether it's race or class, anything you've observed in your firm?
Yeah, I'll have Marty come up here. What we're seeing is pretty much across the board, but I'll ask Marty to come out and try and address that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the data that we're seeing shows us that, like many things, coronavirus is in each of our neighborhoods. We've seen folks in each neighborhood of the city test positive. I do think it's important to note that close to 50% of our cases are in people under the age of 39. So it's really important that when we message this out, people understand that the virus can impact all people. We hear a lot about its disproportionate impact for seniors and for people with underlying health conditions, but we're seeing it across the board in neighborhoods, and that under 39 is an important piece not to forget, because it also shows us that it does impact everyone, and we're again seeing it all across the board in each of our neighborhoods.
So can you say that you're not seeing an increased incidence among Hispanics, for example? Can you rule that out?
Yeah, so as of this point, we're not seeing a huge disproportionate impact. It doesn't mean that there's not pockets that we're looking at in individual neighborhoods and individual areas. And the more data we get, the more we'll be able to look at trends and also target interventions and services in particular areas. So with the more numbers, we'll be able to do that.
I think it also goes back to social distancing in communities, in the city of Boston, different neighborhoods, and making sure that we continue to practice the best practices. And the best practices is that the governor ordered a stay-at-home order advisory. Again, I can't stress that enough to people. I mean, if we follow the guidelines of what was being laid out, the numbers tell us that we won't have larger numbers of coronavirus. But if you look in today in the last 5 days, I think we've gone up like 600-700 cases of coronavirus. So we want to try and stem that tide at some point. And then when we get to that point, when we get to the curve, if you will, that doesn't mean that all of the recommendations are going to be lifted. That means that we just have to continue to be vigilant, because we don't want to see a second surge later on down the road, although we're still working on the first one right now. I'm very concerned about the weather, and I was talking to someone today on the phone, and I looked out the window and I said, nothing like a beautiful, drizzly, cold day to keep people in. And for this week, we're looking at chilly weather and rain. But people need to understand that if we get a 60 or 70 degree day, that doesn't mean that you go to the beach. That doesn't mean that you hang out at the park. That doesn't mean that you hang out with each other. That doesn't mean you have a cookout. For the foreseeable future, we're living under different circumstances right now, and we are heading into summer months, and there's a good chance that as the summer months approaches, June, that we're still having conversations very seriously in the middle of coronavirus. So this for the foreseeable future, it's a very different life that we have to lead right now and live.
Yesterday you put in the 5-minute pickup zones.
Yeah.
How are you striking that balance between safety and still helping out small businesses that are struggling?
I mean, it goes down to the individual. I mean, it's really the question is about some cities and towns have done delivery only and not having takeout. When you pull up to a restaurant, and if there's a line, my advice is you wait in your car until the line goes away. You practice social distancing there, and if you do it the way it's supposed to laid out, it'll be okay. Again, it's an opportunity for us. Our restaurants are providing a service right now. Many of the folks that are working there's only 1 or 2 people inside, maybe a cook and one other person. So it's an opportunity for us to kind of let the restaurant business continue to move forward. They're struggling as well, and they're providing a service. And I think that for all of us, having a bit of normalcy or maybe a different meal once in a while is important for all of us. So I would hope to, similar to the question about the finding of other cities and towns, I hope we don't get to that situation. Yeah. We're having conversations right now with the state. I know that there's many conversations going on around the Commonwealth, and a lot of that is going to be based on what the modeling surge looks like and what the capacity needs are. And I think that there's a lot of people in that conversation right now.
Are you looking at the BCEC?
There's just a lot of conversation going on. Once we, if whatever's decided, whatever it might be, we will let you know, like we did with 1515 Com Ave for the homeless facility, like we did with the West Newton Pavilion campus. You just don't know what people are looking at different sites for different issues, and I think that we have to have those conversations to see what we can do, because you might need it for something else. The BCC.
Governor Baker today said tomorrow he may announce new restrictions for the stay-at-home order. We obviously heard from the president that he extended them to April 30th. Are you preparing for the city of Boston to extend some of these restrictions for stay-at-home?
Yeah, I've been planning on it for a long time. I mean, when we closed schools, we kind of put it out the furthest of anyone that did it. We closed it till April 27th, and then the governor came back on May 4th, and you know, listen, I'm going to be completely honest with people. If we think that May 4th the coronavirus is going to be gone, it's not. And I think that we're in this for the long haul. And I think that we have to do everything we can to make sure that people are safe and people understand that. I think as much information as we can get to people. You know, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I wish I was wrong on the marathon. I wish I was wrong on the St. Patrick's Day Parade. I wish I was wrong on the schools. But unfortunately, right now, just watching what's happened in China, what's happened in Italy, what's happening in Spain, what's happening in England, what's happening in Ireland, what's happening in different states in the country, different states in the United States, we have to be prepared. We're in this for a while. This is not going to be over quickly. And when we do go back to some type of normal life, at least in the short term, I think it'll still be, we'll be taking precautions. And hopefully we can just continue to be, support each other and work together and do everything we can so we can get through this.
Mayor Walsh, on the rent moratorium question, a lot of people won't be covered under what you've done so far. Do you think more needs to be done at the state or the federal level to cover everybody else who doesn't qualify?
Well, that's why I think there's a legislation that's going to the legislature right now, and working with I didn't mention it here because I'm not sure where it is in the legislative process, but I think there's a bill filed at the State House, and we'd like to see that bill move forward quickly. I do think that it's important for landlords and renters to contact the bank, because I think that can solve a lot of issues that won't have to come to the forefront, and that's why we ask people to call our Department of Neighborhood Development to get information about rent and about housing, because we have many different styles and types of housing. I mean, I think it's hard for us to gauge. We can't really gauge in the numbers yet. I think we're always looking for a sign. I keep grabbing Marty, was today the day? He's like, no, we're probably looking at 2.5 weeks from now when we can actually look at the numbers and see what we've laid down, or all of the work we've done to see where those numbers are. I think it's really about the numbers and the positive cases that we have. So we won't really see that for a couple more weeks. First responders tested positive. I don't have a full number. I know that I'm not going to guess. I'll get that. Let me get the actual number for you. But the test site's up and running for the first responders. So we're doing. I think how many tests we do? We did 30 yesterday. We did 30 over the weekend. So we're going to ramp that up. So the expectation is that you could have increased numbers of positives. We've done 30 tests. Yeah, we got it up and running Saturday and Sunday. So now we're just kind of working through the system with East Boston Health Center and finding out the capacity. And again, we don't have to test the whole force of all of our first responders. I think about roughly 5,000 members between police, fire, and EMT. So we don't have to test everybody. But what we want to do is test those folks that are in the protocol and working on that protocol. Any other questions? Say that one more time, sorry.
At what point will people who have been in contact with others who have the virus and tested positive allowed to be tested for an MGH, but they're currently not allowed?
I don't. Do you have an answer for that? Sure. That's more by the state, but we'll try and answer it and get you some information.
Yeah, so again, the question, just so everyone hears, is when people that would have had contact with someone else with COVID-19 who are not symptomatic be allowed to be tested, right? Is that the question? And so again, it's governed really clearly through state guidelines that it's symptomatic folks that become into contact or who gets tested. And that's really about making sure that we look at resources in terms of who gets tested. It's also making sure people don't get a false negative or false positive. If you don't have symptoms, you can actually get a test that tells you you don't have it. It can give you a false sense of health that's really not there. So the guidelines are really meant to keep our public health in place. And as the mayor said, we're following the state and CDC guidelines to the T to make sure we can support who should and should not get tested.
Sorry, may I follow up that question? So the people who did not qualify for the 101 fever or whatever it is, we're not looking for the way to
So the question is those people who don't qualify for a test? Yeah. So if you're symptomatic and you call your primary care physician, there should be availability for a test. If you are being turned away for a test based on hospital guidelines, it would be because the hospital put guidelines in place. But we're glad to have you call the mayor's helpline and have someone call the mayor's helpline, and they'll walk you through the availability of it. The best way to reach it would be to call 311 here, and we'll connect you to the mayor's helpline, and someone answers 311 24/7.
Mayor, do you think the eviction moratorium is sufficient, or do you think there should be more broader action, like Councilor Arroyo's suspension of rents and mortgages throughout that?
Well, I mean, I think that if you're going to do something like that, I think we need to work with the legislature on that to make it a state law. You can't just arbitrarily, we don't have the power, the city council doesn't have the power, I don't as the mayor have the power to do that. We need legislation for that, and I think that might be the legislation that's going to work its way through the State House right now.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, thanks everybody.